Live from the slightly twisted deck bar, it's the Poojie podcast with Justin Lemie.
Alrighty, welcome to this special edition of the Poojie podcast. Do I have an exciting panel lined up for you today? We're going to talk a little bit about the Jacksonville Jaguars and the upcoming draft. So please join me in welcoming four close friends of mine and Jaguar fans who love nothing but Jaguar football talk. We have Sam Leggett, Jacob Yurtical, Luke Mucci, and Kyle Verbin here. So we're going to jump in here soon, getting things started. But I do just want to take this moment just to talk about the NFL draft myself. So this is a moment of new hope for all of us fans out there. I know Jaguar fans especially have had some struggles over the last decade, but the NFL draft always brings us a new hope, and that's what we're going to look into today. So Kyle Verbin, if you want to jump in with me real quick, we can kind of take a look at what happened in 2019 and recap the season a little bit. Go for it.
Oh boy. Well, thanks for having me first off. But just much like every season for the Jags, I started out with a lot of hope and optimism going into the season. And unfortunately that was quickly ripped away. It was cool to come into a season for the first time in a while without Bortles at quarterback. I was always a fan of his, but I know that a lot of people didn't see it that way. So it was going to be interesting to see someone else at the helm. And I think that kind of exposed that we had a lot more issues than just the QB position for the season. So obviously finished 6-10 on the year, 2-4 in the conference, last in the AFC South, which is frustrating considering it looked like a couple years back that we were in a good spot to be dominating the division for the next foreseeable future. So now it looks like we're kind of restarting that process here, and the teams are obviously progressing along with us, but. Positives for the season, 3 Pro Bowlers. DJ Chark, I'll be the first one to say I wasn't a huge fan of his, especially from what I saw last year. I didn't know if he had what it takes to be our number one guy, but boy, was I proven wrong this last year. So definitely excited that he proved himself along with Dede. And then Josh Allen and Calais Campbell obviously making huge impacts there. Sad to see Calais go, but definitely understand the move for the season. The Foles injury is obviously a huge thing that shaped the whole season. I couldn't believe it. Just the beautiful throw for the touchdown on the same play that he got injured, obviously felt for him. But at least the diamond in the rough and Gardner Minshew kind of came out to the forefront there and kind of gave us a little bit of optimism going forward and kind of gave the people of Jacksonville someone to rally around again. That's why I edited my jersey here from last Halloween, so I'll have to cop a new one for this season. But let's go to the bad. So the bad, there's a lot, but the injury obviously first and foremost. But with the AFC South, we had a 3-game stretch in November where it was all conference games, and we had a huge chance to make a statement there, and ended up being 26-3 to the Texans, 33-13 to the Colts, and 42-20 to the Titans. So just a huge slide for us in momentum there. It kind of killed the rest of the season for us. So run defense, absolutely horrible. I think pretty much every team running back had a field day with our defense there, and the linebackers were no help with that either. I think that we've been really struggling to find a leader since Posluszny retired a couple years back, and Telvin, obviously with the health issues there. So that's why I was excited, getting Schobert in free agency. I'm sure we'll talk about that later on. But I'm interested to see how that kind of shakes out, but definitely a lot to improve on, but some few positives to look forward to.
Yeah, you mentioned the slide in the middle of the season, obviously not too ideal for any team, especially the fashion in which they lost those 3 games really shaped the season. There was some reason for hope going into that game in London against the Texans, and man, did that fall apart quickly. But I will say you mentioned a few bright spots, so I'm going to welcome in Sam Leggett here to maybe tell us a little bit about a few players to look forward to in the 2020 season and why there might be some reason for optimism.
Hey guys, there's a lot of positives. I feel the main one, DJ Chark, but I think one that's kind of going under the radar, I would say, is Trey Herndon. Now, not many people knew this guy before the season. Free agent acquisition. Now he's going into his second year. I think a lot of people are starting to notice this guy toward the end of the season. In fact, it actually in my opinion, made the Ramsey trade even more lucrative because, we get rid of our number one corner. We have a guy fill in, maybe not put up the same results, but, he's not getting picked on every week. He kind of got picked on at the beginning of the season. stepped it up toward the end. So, everyone noticed his play, but let's put some numbers to that. So he had 3 interceptions on the season as a first-year player after his rookie season. That's pretty good, in my opinion. He's picking off balls, especially that Sam Darnold game, against the Jets, picking that guy off left and right. He had the best defender passing rating since week 7, which, the next guy closest was Marcus Peters, pretty well-known name. So, if you're putting up better numbers than him toward the end of the season, I feel like that, it's going to translate to the next season. Top 5 and lowest catch rate since December. There's these kind of numbers, are just top of anything in cornerback class with all these great corners. It's crazy. So, and the big thing with me is off the field stuff. So, this off season, he's been donating masks for the whole COVID, relief thing. Donated 10,000 masks around the city of Jacksonville. And I recently actually started following him on Instagram. He's been doing a lot of workouts with a lot of players. The last one I saw was that Noah Igbahoni, sorry, I probably butchered his last name, but a promising slot corner coming out this season, working out with him. That kind of stuff speaks a lot. You're spending your summer, not just, messing around. You're actually putting in the work. It means a lot. So that's one player. Second player, I think a lot of people are excited for. I know, boy, how excited were we when this guy came out, Miles Jack. Man, we had some big expectations for this guy last season. Disappointing to say the least. Got that penalty in one of the first games. Got ejected. Man, that just makes me mad. So we gave him a lot of money, moving him to the outside. Where he belongs. He's going to be able to blitz, cover more. Shoot, you can use that at speed and acceleration, his agility a lot more. I feel like on the outside. So that's the next big player for me. And obviously Minshew. I mean, everybody can talk all they want about Minshew. By December. Yeah, he was cleaning it up. So those are probably the 3 top players I'd say coming into this next draft.
Yeah, and I like what you mentioned there about Herndon, a guy that really flew under the radar in the second half of the season, probably a lot due to the fact that the Jaguars simply weren't performing that well as a whole. In football, obviously, you got to put all the pieces together, and Herndon was one of those pieces that stood out, but they just didn't have the pieces around him to really make for a successful season. But you mentioned the off-the-field charity work. Great to have that type of character around the facility. And you mentioned making that Ramsey trade more lucrative. And we've seen recently what the Rams have done to maybe not perform as well this upcoming season. We'll see what that turns into for that first-round pick next draft in 2021. But it is nice to be able to get rid of Ramsey and lose Boye, but still know that we have a cornerback that's going to be able to hold his own. And then you have DJ Hayden at nickel corner. So obviously in the draft, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is maybe finding that second corner that's going to play opposite of Herndon. But it is nice to know that Herndon's there to stay. So we'll jump into you mentioned a little bit about free agency with Schobert. But we're going to jump into free agency real quick. I want to welcome Jacob in real quick. Do you want to tell me a little bit about what's happened thus far with free agency, maybe some pieces we've added, some pieces we've lost, and what that means for this season?
Yeah, for sure. So just going to the people we added, I know Kyle mentioned the name Joe Schobert. He's that middle linebacker from the Cleveland Browns we signed. I love that signing. He's going to come in. People say that he's very intelligent. So he's going to come in, really make sure the defense is set and in alignment. And Sam mentioned with Miles Jack, now Miles Jack's going to be more free to play his natural position outside. Rodney Gunter, we got him from the Cardinals. He's a big end. He's kind of going to come in and compete for that Campbell spot. He's more of a run stuffer than a pass rusher, so it'll probably kick inside. Smoot might come on the third downs to rush the passer. I expect a big jump from him, actually. Al Woods from the Seahawks, great big nose tackle, going to be our next Marcel Darius, essentially. He was really big in stopping the run for the Seahawks. They averaged about 92 yards allowed when he was starting, and when he wasn't, it was about 132 yards rushing allowed. So that's a big jump. Rashawn Melvin's going to compete outside with Trey Herndon and hopefully maybe a rookie corner coming in to, just add some depth and competition to that spot. Cassius Marsh, he's a rotational kind of guy, a linebacker DN, so not going to expect too much from him, but good depth piece. Another guy on offense I'm excited about, Tyler Eifert. He's going to come in, really hopefully change the tight end room for us because he, on his own, matched our tight end statistics last year. It was his first full year playing healthy. But he's also going to be a mentor for like James O'Shaughnessy, Josh Oliver. So he's going to come in, bring the immediate impact, but hopefully the long term as well. Some positions we may not have hit that I kind of wish we would have, but we do have the draft coming up. I kind of wish we would have went for a veteran backup quarterback, someone that while Minshew starts, he can, come in and be that, coach on the sideline for him. A pass-catching running back. I know Gruden really likes West Coast style, so someone to spell Leonard Fournette. Receiver, left tackle, but those are positions we'll likely hit in the draft. I also thought about safety. Jared Wilson back there, he did a good job, but I think we could definitely upgrade the free safety position. Ronnie Harrison, of course, has the strong safety position. So overall, I think they made sure to hit all kind of needs to free ourselves up for the draft and our strategy going into that.
And yeah, you bring up that Schobert signing, and obviously that's going to be the marquee signing of the offseason. Not only does that kind of shore up the middle linebacker position, probably just about as well as it was when we had Posluszny, but that also takes care of that outside linebacker position, which I know Jaguar fans were very hesitant about going into this season. So that's a very good mention there from you about that middle linebacker position. It takes care of two positions, not just the one. And then this was one of the quieter free agent seasons, or I guess free agent periods in Jaguars. The Jaguars have had in the past 4 or 5 years, ever since the Julius Thomas year when we brought him in from the Broncos. So Jaguar fans have definitely had pretty exciting free agencies over the past half decade or so. But that leads us into the draft. And there's a lot to be, I guess, questioned and a lot to be answered when it comes to the draft. Anytime you're picking inside the top 10, that means you have holes all over the field. And having 2 first-round picks kind of frees up a lot of opportunity for the Jags. It does change a little bit the fact that we do, I guess, presume to think we have the starting quarterback of the future. So that takes maybe potentially one position off the board, we would think. But let's see what Luke has to say kind of about this draft and where he sees this going for the team.
Yeah, thanks. So as you were saying, we have those 2 first picks in the first round, and we have 12 picks in total. 2 in the first, 1 in the second, 1 in the third, and then we have 3 4s, 2 5s, 2 6, and a 7. Now, I don't see any way that we take 12 rookies into camp. I just don't see that happening. And so the Jags front office have a lot of ammunition going into this draft, ways to wheel and deal their way into moving up the draft board if they so choose. Now, looking at the potential prospects that are out there, I think the way the Jaguars should go with this, there is a very, very deep wide receiver class. I mean, you can get some guy in the 3rd round that can still be plugged in and playing for you day one almost. But it is very tempting when you see the names Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Henry Ruggs. And when you look at the tape from Gardner Minshew at Washington State, when you let him gunsling it, he performs at a top level. And having another threat like that, it's very tempting to go and take that pick as a wide receiver up in the 9 spot. But I honestly would like to see us take a big, beefy D tackle, or even Andrew Thomas, who plays the left tackle out of Georgia. He could make Cam Robinson have a little competition going on in there, because there's some times where Cam Robinson looks good, and then there's other times where it's kind of a weak spot and we just get too much pressure coming towards our quarterbacks. So I would like us to go beef up with our first pick, because once you go past those first few guys, for line at least, there's a big drop-off in level. And obviously at wide receiver, the top 3 guys are just studs. But you can also pick other ones later. Now, I think there are a few players that could drop down to us, and if they do, we have to take them. Those being Okudah and Simmons. I know Simmons doesn't really fit the way we're going to be playing, since we already have Schobert and Miles Jack. But the guy is an absolute monster. He can play anywhere. When asked before what position you play, he said defense, and that rings very true. He could even be playing the free safety for us. He's just a fast flying freak. And Okuda, obviously, I think is the best corner out there in this draft class. So we could potentially even move up. And I think listening to the draft presser yesterday with Dave Caldwell and Doug Marrone, it sounded like we might make moves on Thursday.
Yeah, and you mentioned a few of those positions. Just a funny note, out of the last 5 drafts, the Jaguars have taken a defensive player for the last 5 drafts. And I don't want to say that that's going to continue that route, but the only offensive piece we've added in the first round in the last 5 years has been Leonard Fournette. And you mentioned wide receiver, you mentioned offensive lineman. Those are some of the positions that maybe some Jaguar fans would have liked to seen the team hit on when Blake Bortles was the quarterback. Now, will this team make the same decisions with Gardner Minshew, or will they use some of this draft capital to put some elite talent around him high in the draft rather than getting those offensive linemen that maybe fall into the second round? We're looking at Cam Robinson. We're looking at Jawan Taylor. So those have kind of formed into being some decent talent on the offensive line. But like you mentioned, some of those other offensive linemen in the first round might be a good option. So I do want to open this up kind of open forum style, just kind of hear everyone's thoughts. We can go one by one, but I'm going to switch it over to grid view. That way everyone can jump in and just kind of take me through some of your thoughts, what you'd like them to see here in the draft coming up on Thursday.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. I'll go kind of the non-conventional route because I know that there's obviously a lot of obvious moves that we could do, but just with the talent in this draft and with the amount of picks that we have, I kind of want to get a little creative with it. So I could easily see with how many teams are really desperate for a quarterback, there may be – I know there's a couple teams that have their eye on either Okuda or Simmons or someone like that, and I feel like they would give up a lot to get that. So my first prediction is maybe the Jags trade back a pick or two, not too far out of the top 10 there, but at least back enough to get value out of that pick. If there's around 3 or 4 guys that we're legitimately considering in that top 10 spot, and they're still available from where we're sitting for our first pick, I could easily see us trying to just get value out of that because we're not dead set on a certain position itself. And then using that pick and then obviously the later round or later in the first round, taking that wide receiver. Because I'm hesitant to say that all 3 of those top guys will be available at the end of the first round, but I'm hoping so, just with like we said, the talent all around the other sides of the ball there. But my other prediction was probably just like Luke said, just beefing up the lines. I could easily see us going, defensive line, D tackle for that first top 10 pick, and then going offensive tackle for the next one. So I think that, there's a lot, like Luke said, a lot of skill guys that we could get late into the draft. Gabe Davis, obviously one of those guys that is personal to us that we would love to see in the Jags. And I think that we can, if we can solidify those line positions to give those guys the best chance to succeed, I think that's really going to benefit us more than anything, because that's where we've struggled for so long. You can have all these guys that are going to play well, but it doesn't mean anything if the quarterback doesn't have time or if the defense isn't getting to the ball. So,
yeah, I think you definitely brought up some good points there, and something interesting to note. Over the last few drafts, we've seen a lot of good receiver talent kind of fall into those middle rounds. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing with receivers is a lot of them are system guys. And if you get the right receiver with the right skill set in your offense, whether it's in the first round or the 4th or 5th round, you can still make something special out of them. And we see it time and time again, teams looking back and saying, wow, why did we not draft him earlier in the draft? So you look at the wide receiver position, while it is deep, and especially at the top, it's very top heavy. That depth goes into those middle rounds to where you could get a 1 or 2 guy easily in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah, I guess I'll go next regarding, kind of draft strategy that they might have. I have a couple ways. I feel like either they're going to go heavy on defense because we've lost a lot of defensive players, and they might, do a lot to try to help out Minshew. I do recall, though, like in terms of the offensive line, both Doug Marrone and Dave Caldwell have publicly stated that they are pretty happy with our line. I know fans aren't. So I don't know if that's a smokescreen. So I'm going to assume they maybe don't get an offensive lineman first round and maybe go, for a Derek Brown or Javon Kinlaw, like, Luke was hoping to get one of those big beefy guys at 9. That would be a great move because, some of our best days were with John Henderson and Marcus Stroud, 2 huge great defensive tackles. And if we stick defense by 20, there's some corners there that may not be CJ Henderson or Jeff Okudah, but Trayvon Diggs, as well as Christian Fulton from LSU. So if we could double up on defense, that's one route. But if they really want to get Minshew another weapon and get like Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb early, I could see us going that at 9 and then maybe still getting one of those corners at 20 unless a Kinlaw somehow drops to 20 as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that as well. When you look at what Jacksonville has had over the past decade or two, you mentioned John Henderson, Marcus Stroud. Most recently, we've had Malik Jackson, Marcel Darius, and we've seen the success that the defensive line has had. Obviously, the 2017 defense is going to be one that gets circled time and time again, not only having two extremely talented corners, but also having those extremely talented defensive linemen to kind of get some pressure on the quarterbacks and, kind of help the run defense as well. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. Sam, I don't want to steal your thunder. Not sure if you're going to mention this, but something I'd maybe consider if Kinlaw does maybe slide to 15 or 16, trading up from 20 and trading into the mid-teens could be something we'd want to do if he's high enough on their board. I think, like Luke mentioned earlier, having 12 draft picks is great, but not as far as collecting talent, but as far as draft capital to trade to other teams to move up to get the guy you want. We are in the position to do that, and I'd really like to see the Jags kind of capitalize on that situation. But Sam, I want to hear your thoughts on what's going on.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, of course, we have a ton of picks. We're not going to take 12 rookies into camp, but I think those picks are going to be used in the second and third round to move up, like Dave Caldwell always does, to get up and get his guy before someone else does. And I mean, in the first round, I just think you're going to have to give up too much. The number 9 pick, I think Dave Caldwell knows, if he doesn't hit this pick, he's gone. He's given him too many chances within the top 10. He's got to hit this pick. And, the one guy who might be sitting there at 9, Derek Brown. I know we've been talking about him, but man, I've been warming up to this guy. Obviously Okudah is going to be the pick at 9. Let's see. He is there. He had a bad combine. Ramsey had a great combine. He was projected top 3. Great combine, fell to us at 5. Okudah, maybe a top 5 guy, not a great combine. Maybe he falls to us at 9. I think that would be the pick at 9. Otherwise, man, Derek Brown, I think, would be a home run for this defense. Like, what Jacob was saying, John Henderson. But, hey, there's a couple things about Derek Brown that I really, really like. I really like the fact that he's versatile. The Jags like moving their pieces around on the D-line. He can either play at the 5, he can play at the 3. We can play him on every down. The man is violent. The man is an off-the-field pro, apparently, and, he's a great guy. We need those guys in Jacksonville, and we need violent players that are going to mess up because we just got destroyed. It was embarrassing, Our defense was embarrassed. We need to start embarrassing their team. We need to get the trenches big. Derek Brown is the pick at 9. If he's not there, obviously, Panthers could take him. I see us, Jeudy could fall to 9. Obviously, I think Jeudy, people talk about, man, it's the best wide receiver class. We can pick someone second or third round. Man, how about we go get the number 1 guy in the number 1 wide receiver class for Minshew? See what this kid has. If not, we bring in a QB next year. Guess what? He's got the number 1 weapon for him to grow. So it just seems like, those two guys, Derek Brown, though, and that guy gets me excited on the D-line. Man, that guy just has a lot of good things going for him. People say you can't rush the passer, man. Just go watch the tape. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, Sam, just picturing Chark alongside Jerry Jeudy is just getting me very excited.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do there. Something you mentioned about possibly Okudah dropping to 9. It seems very unrealistic, like extremely unrealistic, and it seems like the only way that could happen is if 3 quarterbacks go before the Jags pick and 2 offensive linemen. You'd be looking at either Dredrick Wills, Tristan Wirfs, or Andrew Thomas, potentially all 3 of those. We do see a lot of teams get a little draft happy on draft night, and they do make that move for the quarterback. You got the Giants there. It'd be difficult for the Giants to pass up on Simmons, but they do have Daniel Jones, and they're going to want to, replace that left tackle position and maybe get an offensive tackle there. So that's something to watch. as well as the Chargers. They recently traded away Russell Okung, so they might go for an offensive lineman as well. So Josh Allen last year fell to the Jags. Recently, we've seen Cam Robinson fall to the Jags in the second round. We saw Jawan Taylor fall to the Jags in the second round. We've seen Dave Caldwell get these top 15 talents in the second round, but I really like the point you mentioned. Why not just go get the number one guy at one of the number one positions of need? I love that statement. I think that it's a very simple way of putting it, but it's a very, I guess, intelligent way to put it. Why wait for the person in the second round, or why wait for the person at 20 when you know this guy might be the next big thing? Last time the Jags drafted a quarterback in the first round, didn't work out too well with Justin Blackmon. Obviously did not pan out how they wanted to. When he was on the field, extremely talented. When he was off the field, man, he was off the field, and now he's pretty much off the NFL rosters for good. But we'll open this up real quick to everyone, just kind of some other thoughts that you might have of what direction some teams might go. If the Jags could look to deal Yannick Ngakoue on draft night, gathering another first-round pick or second-round pick, kind of some other thoughts.
Yeah, I think that we are going to be dealing Jan on draft day. I don't know if you guys listened to the presser yesterday with Dave Caldwell and Doug Marrone, but it sounded like to look forward to moves being made on Thursday or Friday. And I can only imagine just pairing Jan with some of our picks that we just have as ammunition to go out and maybe land another first round if we could. That would be amazing for us. Touching on quarterback, they also touched on that a little bit. It sounds like they aren't going to go out and try and chase a quarterback. If one's there that they like to bring in as competition for Minshew, just in camp, just to keep him honest, they might take one. But if not, they're not afraid to go out and just get one of those veteran guys that are out there on free agency.
Yeah, it's curious a curious question. Would they look to target a quarterback in the first or second? Would they just wait until the fourth or fifth? I think, the move to get rid of Nick Foles, yeah, it was all about cap space, but you got to kind of wonder if that was about competition as well. Are they ready to just hand the reins over to Minshew and say, listen, man, there's no competition. Go out there and be great. And, like we mentioned earlier, if he's not, then looking into the 2021 draft to maybe find the piece that they need at quarterback.
I'll ask you this question. Considering that, we have Minshew right now, and with the history of what our picks have done, do you see us taking a quarterback with that first pick as a complete failure unless it's, is there any quarterback that you would justify taking that top 10 pick on that if he's there?
Complete failure. I would not be happy with that. Minshew came in and won 6 games, and he didn't even play the entire season, and he had all of our wins. So, he's shown flashes where if you help him play the way he played at Washington State, he can just flat out ball. And honestly, if I heard that the team had a discussion and said, hey, we're going to pick a quarterback, and they all said, hey, we like Minshew, I would not doubt that, because that man just loves football. It's in his veins, and he makes people want to go out there and just win. So I think he's a real great leader over there.
Yeah, there were some pieces around Minshew last year, or there were some games that Minshew was in that the Jaguars had no reason to win as far as the talent that they put on the field. The Broncos game comes to mind. The Bengals game comes to mind. Ironically, they have the number 1 pick. But there were just some games that a absolutely terrible franchise should not have won, and we won those games. So what that leads me to believe is maybe Minshew does have that special touch that if you get him a few more complementary pieces like a Jerry Jeudy, like an offensive lineman to protect him, you could really see him take that 6-game total up to 8 or potentially 9 games.
So I'm going to continue playing devil's advocate and talk about a very persistent rumor, and actually Fournette kind of brought that to the forefront recently too. Is Cam Newton. What would you guys think if we got him to compete with Gardner Minshew, in the offseason here?
I definitely think you're playing with fire if you do that. Because Cam Newton would be, a great, option if you don't have a Minshew, right now you're trying to work with. Because if you bring in Cam Newton, you might be able to advertise it as well. We want a veteran to come in, potentially push him. But really, the first game, if Minshew struggles, they're going to be like, bring in Cam Newton, and there's not really going to be, much of a real shot for Minshew to shine or to fall. So I feel like as of right now, we should probably just do what we can to get a veteran that's not really going to be that, we don't want to have the chance to put him in and just completely end the Minshew show too early and not find out.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we see these types of veterans get in as backups on a lot of rosters, and the second one game goes south, whether it's week 3, week 6, no matter what it is, the Bluebirds come out in the stands, the fans just want to see the next guy. I mean, rightfully so in some cases, but I do think that with what we've heard from this organization as far as Minshew's concerned and the move to move Nick Foles, you have to think that this team is almost fully committed to him long term, and there's no sense in bringing someone in that's going to steal the spotlight or take away, I guess, some of his reps even in practice. It would be worth looking at another veteran, a journeyman quarterback as they like to call him, but bringing in someone like Cam Newton, yeah, it's great for competition, but I don't necessarily know if it's great for the mental of some of these quarterbacks, having that type of relationship kind of build in the locker room.
I agree. I also don't know if he would, handle being a backup well, considering his personality and his style of play. So,
can I just bring up a quick point real quick? Unless, Sam, you had something?
Yeah, real quick. I think the name's been bouncing around Twitter. I think everyone's seen it as Andy Dalton. He's got ties to our new offensive coordinator, Jake Gruden. And you're right. We're not going to take a guy in the first round. Maybe Tua. I know we've met with him. We've talked to him. So that would be interesting. If he fell to there and the Jags are sitting there, what do you do? It's kind of like a draft day situation. It's kind of funny. But we still got a great guy in Minshew. I don't think anyone's trying to move off him. I think the staff's pretty much sold on Minshew now. They realized that toward when they put Nick Foles in that Buccaneers game. I don't know if any of y'all were watching it. I'm sure tons of people watching this are going to know that was an embarrassment when we put Nick Foles out there. So I think they're pretty sold on him. Bringing in a veteran like Andy Dalton, I think would be great for Minshew's production as well as, having a backup in case he goes down.
And Jacob, what were you going to say there?
Something we had been talking about, obviously, Yannick Ngakoue being traded on draft night, and a name or a team that I know he's been linked with a lot has been the Eagles. And what's interesting is if we were to get a first-round pick out of them, and it was this year, the Eagles pick right after us at 21. So if somehow that move was made where we got their first-round pick this year, we could potentially be talking about 2 back-to-back picks in the first round. We could go, big defensive tackle early and then maybe hit corner, safety like Xavier McKinney, Grant Delpit at that 21 spot. They have a lot of stuff that they can, maybe then move your 20th pick up if you have to get Kinlaw, if he fell a little bit, if you don't get him. I just thought it was interesting that the Eagles, who he's been tied to a lot, pick right after us. So if we got that pick, we'd be looking at back-to-back.
And that you bring up a good point there about getting that back-to-back first-round pick and kind of freeing up some options for us. Obviously, anytime a team has 3 first-round picks, I think we saw it from the Raiders last year, it kind of obviously gets the fan base excited, but it's an embarrassment of riches. Like it's not supposed to work that way, and if it does work that way, great. We saw the Raiders do it. They got Farrell, they got Josh Jacobs, and I can't remember the third guy they got, but they got some talent in there that actually made some impacts. And that Farrell pick last year actually freed up Allen, dropping to the Jags, ironically enough, which was nice for us. But I do want to ask you this question before we do have to stop this. Is there any player in this draft that you would say is worth trading up from 9 for? Going from 9 to 4, 9 to 6, anything like that? Is there a player in this draft outside of the obvious, Chase Young? Like, I doubt he's going to slide. But I want to, I guess, pose that question because if a team like the Chargers trades up to the Lions at 3 and takes Tua in front of the Dolphins, is there a reason to trade up to 4 with the Giants to maybe try and draft Okudah ahead of the Lions at 6? I just want to hear your thoughts on what players would be worth trading up for.
My concern is that we would just have to give up too much to be able to do that. So at least from my perspective, I don't think that there's a player with the talent that I could see falling to us. I feel like we'd be happy regardless. And I think that we'd be giving up too much if we tried to move up those spots. I think those teams are definitely, they realize that they're in a valuable spot and they're not going to give it up easy. So I can't see that happening too.
Yeah, Kyle's right. We're going to have to give up our 20, to move up to that 4 spot. It just makes no sense, In my mock, I don't have any moves, obviously. I got Derek Brown going to the Lions, filling in that Matt Patricia D tackle they need in his defense. And, I got tackles being taken all over the place. I got a tackle going to the Chargers. I got a tackle going to the Cardinals. And then Okudah falls all the way down. There's some big boys at the top of this draft. These GMs, especially Gettleman, I've been seeing stuff all over Twitter. Gettleman's on an offensive tackle. He doesn't want Simmons. He wants a guy to protect his star QB to make sure, he doesn't look, like a crazy guy when he took Daniel Jones at 8. So, that's what I've been seeing. I think it is a very real possibility. And I know a lot of people are saying, man, Okudah's going number 3 to the Lions. I don't know. I don't see, when was the last time the Lions took a small, scrawny guy in their top picks? It's always O-line. It's always, D-line. So,
yeah. I think you bring up an interesting point there, and so did Bourbon. It's not very often you see a team trade up for a position not named quarterback. It's not very often. Yeah. So for that to happen, it would be a very interesting scenario. And also, I do think Sam is right that I think a lot more quarterbacks and offensive linemen are going to go early than people expect, simply because when it comes down to it, if you don't shore up those 2 positions, you're not really shoring up your long-term future for the franchise. The Jaguars are in an interesting enough position to be in the top 10 and not necessarily need those 2 positions, so that could free up an option for a defensive player named Isaiah Simmons, named Jeff Okudah, named Derek Brown, to drop to the Jags at 9, who otherwise would have been a top 5 pick in any other year. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I think as Jaguar fans, we do have to be excited about whatever the outcome is going to be. I think there are very few ways this draft could go that would make people upset. And I think there are tons of ways this draft could go that would get people excited for the future, built around Minshew and built around maybe getting that defense back to a 2017-like season. So I appreciate the 4 of you being here and going over this stuff. We're going to have to sign off here shortly. So thanks again for being here. And I'm looking forward to watching this draft and seeing what direction they go. All right.
Get your popcorn ready.
Let's go, Derek Brown.
Let's go. We're getting Jeff Okudah. I know it. Let's go.